Hi, welcome to a special edition of TFT Hyperroll, where while I'm going through this match, I'm also going to try to break down some steps into how I go about planning on playing a Hyperroll and what things I do as I'm going along to help my plan come together. Hopefully this can help you become a better player. This may seem like a no-brainer, but having some comps in your head or written down on a cheat sheet next to you can really help you going forward in this. As you can see at the beginning of this match, I get handed 2 Trundles, so I'm likely going to try to edge into Skirmisher, especially after picking up an Udyr. However, what if that hadn't happened? What are some other comps we could do? Well, the 2 items I have right now are 2 sparring gloves, so let's look at some comps and ways that they could be used. This is a 6 redeemed comp, and as you can see, there's a Quicksilver on Kale, and also if I had had the ability, I would have put a Jeweled Gauntlet on Vel'Koz, which would be excellent items for them. If you want to see this whole video for this comp, the link is right up above. Another possibility with 2 sparring gloves is the Dawnbringer comp, because you need those gloves for Nidalee to create as many dodge items as possible. Of course, this will also work into a Skirmisher build. But if you want to see this Dawnbringer guide, there's a link up above for you to follow. If you decide to go for 9 Forgotten, that's a very easy one because you're just following 1 trait throughout the entire match. But 2 sparring gloves are excellent to have because they are key items for Draven to make the Infinity Edge and the Last Whisperer. I did this build, it was one of my first TFT Hyperroll builds, and the link is up above if you want to see it played out. And last but certainly not least is the unkillable vampire build that I put together with 4 Nightbringers turning out the damage via Aphelios. You need the sparring glove to make the Infinity Edge, and a Quicksilver I put on Morgana to keep her from getting stunned. Again, link above if you want to see this build played out. And back to our match. At this point I'm thinking about items. So here I get a sword, and now I'm thinking about what items can I make with this sword for a Skirmisher comp. It's an easy one into the Negatron Cloak because that'll make the Bloodthirster, and of course picking up the cannon completes the first 3 Skirmishers, which this is going to bring me into point 2. If you're lucky enough to know exactly what build you're going for, and you have a character that can be used as an item holder, you want to get your items on as fast as possible and get them onto the item holder. In this case, I'm going to be using Udyr as an item holder for Jax later in the game. So as soon as I get any of the 3 key items, which are the Bloodthirster or its Shadow version, the Runan's Hurricane or its Shadow version, and a Rapid Fire Cannon, I want to put those elements on Udyr so I have the best chance of winning early fights as possible. And as you can see, just getting items on the characters is not a guaranteed win strategy. You're still possibly going to lose some early rounds, which is fine. Unless things get really ugly, you want to keep moving forward. Here, I grab the Recursive Bow because that will work into the Rapid Fire Cannon or the Hurricane. This brings me into tip number 3. Different comps have different roll structures. In this case, I want to roll enough to try to pick up the 4th Skirmisher. Luckily, I'm able to silver up Trundle, and then I find Lee Sin. And at this point, I'm going to stop rolling until the next time I need to add a character to the board. Now, here's a mistake I made in this game. I should have put that Recursive Bow directly onto Udyr, because the next 2 items I want to make from him both need the Recursive Bow, either the Rapid Fire Cannon or the Runan's Hurricane. I'm trying my best to have the game do the rolling for me. So in this case, without having to spend 2 gold, I'm able to silver up my cannon and I'm all set for the next round. Luckily, I catch my mistake and I put the Recursive Bow on Udyr so that he's a little bit more powerful than he would have otherwise been. Even though losing 2 health wouldn't be a catastrophic loss, you want to try and win as many rounds as possible to keep your health high. With another empty slot, it's time to roll down and see if we can pick up a 5th Skirmisher to try and fit in here. Unfortunately, this roll doesn't go as planned, which brings me to the next tip. In a perfect world, I get a skirmisher, but I didn't. So I grabbed a Nightbringer so that I could trigger the Nightbringer buff on Lee Sin, who is now silver. So this will allow me to at least have some additional advantage going forward, even as I continue to let the game do the rolling to look for my next skirmisher. And I'm hoping that it all works out. Now the items I picked up have a couple of different uses. If I had gotten a Pantheon, I could have put the Giant's Belt and Chain Vest together to make a Sunfire Cape. Or if I had gotten a Nidalee, this would have made the Trap Claw and the Shroud of Stillness. But since I don't have either of those characters yet, I'm holding back on exactly what items to make at this point. With another empty slot, it's time to just roll and see what I can pick up. I want to grab any skirmisher I can see, just because the skirmisher buff will apply to all characters. So even if I had 2 Lee Sins on the board, each Lee Sin would be gaining attack damage per second. But since we got a Nidalee, it's time to slam the Nidalee items together. This will increase her dodge chance by an additional 30%, so she now has a 75% dodge chance when she changes into Cougar form. I couldn't have really asked for a better NPC round, as it gives me all the elements for the Rapid Fire Cannon and the Runin's Hurricane. So I am just on cloud 9 as I additionally pick up the Pantheon, so I can go up to the 6 skirmishers right now, moving Pantheon into the front line and completing my entire build for Udyr. Once you get the Rapid Fire Cannon on him, you bring him back so he can attack from the second row. As you can see, having the characters itemized and of course having all 6 skirmishers at this point in the fight really makes a huge difference. Stage 6 is all about item hunting and finding those parts that you need for your build. Here, the Giant's Belt is the obvious choice because you want to put a redemption on Pantheon. Pantheon tends to last a long time in fights, and having a redemption on him will allow him to heal Trundle, Udyr, and hopefully Jax, if you're going to get one. Which brings me to tip number 5. Every comp has its own general positioning ideas. In this case with skirmishers, I want to put Pantheon in the middle so he can heal as many people as possible with the redemption. I also want to put Nidalee behind Pantheon and Udyr so that she can keep the people in front of them from casting as long as possible. This will change as the game goes on, as you'll want to knock out as much of the other team's mana as possible. With chance to get a new character, we get really lucky and hit the jackpot. Sorry, my kid made me put this joke in here. I considered putting him in as the extra character, but in reality, getting the carry items onto Jax is just too important, and so I sell the Udyr, remove the items, put them on Jax, and put out a second Lee Sin, which is never a bad thing, since his ult is going to slow the attack speed of everything around them. Then, as usual, I talk about luck a lot. I get a spatula. So now I have a lot of possibilities going forward. In this battle here again, you can see the importance of positioning, as having Pantheon next to Jax will keep him healed no matter what he faces. But all of this ultimately brings me to tip number 6. Okay, yeah, there's a little bit of sarcasm there, and unless you can control luck, at what point, please give me a call. I'd like to put in an order for some lottery numbers. But this build becomes incredibly lucky simply because I get the Skirmisher emblem. I grab a Riven because she will synergize the Dawnbringer buff with Nidalee, and so it's combining a little bit of everything that we've talked about so far. Having Riven on the team will allow Nidalee to heal in case she gets low. Having Pantheon in the middle of the team will keep everyone just a little bit healed so they can take on the extra damage and ultimately take down the monstrosity. And in reality, I only talk about how important luck is in this game because there are so many times that you can be doing absolutely everything right. You can be holding your rolling, you can have the right items on the right characters, you can be setting everything up perfectly, but it just doesn't end up working out the way you want because you don't get the right character at the critical time. You don't get the synergy that you need when you need it, or you end up just facing someone who has a character in a position that you never could have expected. Because when you're facing 8 players, it's not easy to predict exactly who you're going to go up against. In this case, I switch out Riven for Garen simply because he's going to be a stronger frontliner. Since it's later in the game, I'm starting to look at where people are positioned and decide where I can put Nidalee. Earlier in the game, when it was full 8 players, there's really no way to know for sure who you're going to go up against next. And even with planning here, you can see I guessed wrong, because I would have been far better with Nidalee over to the left. However, luckily, all of the other elements are playing on my side, and so Pantheon consistently healing Jax allows him the time he needs to build up the strength to take down the rest of that team. And yes, in this case, I knew the comp, I knew the items, I knew the synergies, I had the plan, I stuck with it, I slowed my roll, but I also got very, very lucky. And that allowed me to have a team that was powerful enough to carry into the late game and be able to roll a lot towards the end when I really needed. The next 2 minutes were just me rolling like crazy to try to find the final skirmisher in Viego. For the moment, I've put an additional Lee Sin out on the field in the hopes of just shoring up the team. Again, adding any extra skirmisher is good because at this point they're still going to be gaining attack damage for every second. Here you can see though, it is not quite enough to take down this team. Even with all that extra attack damage and all that extra healing, that Vlad is just too tanky for me to take on at this point. We grab the Viego to make ourselves the 9 skirmishers, pick up an additional Garen, and with the Nico's help that we got much earlier in the game, we can turn that Garen to silver, 2-star, whichever you like, and that is never a bad thing to have. I'll save you the time of a whole bunch of additional rolls looking for a Viego and just go on to the next battle where we face someone who is struggling to hold on at this point. With our Silver Garen, we have a lot more frontline strength, which gives Jax a lot more time to pick up damage. With 9 skirmishers, he is picking up 10 damage per second. The rapid fire cannon is keeping him out of CC range, and the hurricane allows him to hit 2 things at once for the win. With it down to just 2 players, positioning and luck really become the most important things, because by this point you've done everything else you can. I keep checking in to see where their people are positioned to decide where I'm going to put my Nidalee so I can have the most effect, and where I'm going to put my Viego so I can decide which player of theirs I want to take off the screen for a few moments. As you can see, I take their most powerful player down and also decrease the mana on their right side, which is where they had most of their players stacked. This again enables Jax to have that extra time necessary to just come in and continue to gain strength as he goes. This was the team earlier with the insanely powerful Vladimir. However, I was able to prevail over him with a little bit of positioning checking and a little bit of luck. Hope you enjoyed and have an absolutely awesome day.